what you see here is the result of laziness on my part. This is a culmination of me collecting comics, pulling out arcs and reading them, letting people read my comics and not putting them away. After a while, I tend to accumulate large piles that, rather than put them back in an organized manner, I kind of let them pile up near my bedstand or, around my desk or wherever. So I went through my house and I collected all of the comic books that were out of the containers that I used to organize them, and I put them out here into piles so you can see how I begin to organize them in a way that I can label them and put them away properly. So if you're collecting comics for the first time or you're organizing your comics for the first time, you're probably going to want to pull them all out like I did and just find a nice wide open area that you can begin to pile them up and organize them. The easiest way to begin organizing your comics is obviously by title. So at this point, don't worry about the numerical order, just get them into piles of the same title or similar storylines so that you can begin to organize them this way. And usually what I do is I just take a pile of comics, I have several piles behind me that I also have to organize, and I just kind of start to go through and I lay them out in front of me in a way that it kind of makes sense. So we've got Ultimate Fantastic Four. I'm going to start a pile over here for that. I've got an old Captain America comic. This is another thing. So if you come across comics that don't have their bags and boards, this is a great time to start putting that together. So I'm going to take my bag and board, slip my comic on in, and I'm going to put that in its own pile. I've got X-Men Legacy, I'm going to put it over there, Uncanny X-Men, another Uncanny X-Men, regular X-Men, X-Men Endangered Species. Okay, so this is a one-shot. There's not going to be a really great place for this to fit in, and we're going to talk about this later when this kind of thing happens. For right now, I'm just going to bag and board it, and I'm going to slip it onto the side in its own pile of other things that don't fit, like other one-shots or short storylines. So we'll get that started. Same thing with these guys. So X Infernus, this was the Ileana story that they did. I can tell down here that it's a 1 out of 4, so it only has 4 issues. Again, it's not going to fit in its own category. It's not going to warrant its own magazine holder. It's only got 4 issues, and it doesn't really fit in numerical order with any of the other X comics. So for now, we're just going to bag and board it, and I'm going to put it to the side, and I'll tell you what I do with these guys later. Old school X Factor. Now you guys don't have to bag and board. Now obviously with comics like this, so this is the original newsprint comics, they're very delicate. They're light sensitive, they're moisture sensitive, they get damaged easily, they yellow and kind of tear very easily. So I definitely recommend putting these guys in bags and boards. The new style comics with its magazine print, this glossy print that you see here, I mean, these things are virtually indestructible. I've spilled milkshakes on them and just wiped it away. And I'm not saying to do that. And, obviously, if you have the resources and want to buy all the bags and boards, go ahead, buy the bags and boards and put them in there. It's just not as important to me. Sometimes I kind of let it slide. If I ran out of bags and boards, obviously I'm going to choose the newsprint comics over the new ones. But the bags and boards do make it easier to kind of file through and find the number that you want without bending the comics or ruining them. Alright, so I finished putting my comic books into different piles according to title. Now I'm going to go in each pile and numerically organize them as well. This will make it easier to transfer them over to the bookcases and magazine holders later on. And there's going to be a huge number difference in some of them because I have some of the old Uncanny titles, like here issue 174, and I have 483. So doesn't matter though, just go ahead and put them in numerical order. I'm going to put them from lowest to highest, so oldest comic books in the back of the pile, newer comic books on the top of the pile. And I'm just going to kind of start shuffling them in. So I've got Days of Future Past. This is an old trade. So I can either stick it in the trade pile, which usually get shelved differently, but because this is an old school trade, they're very thin and small, and it actually is, it goes linear with the comic books, and even shows you the cover of what Uncanny X-Men title is involved here. So I can see that we're looking at 141. So I'm just going to put this trade in order with these comics, starting as issue 141. Another thing you can do if you come across a trade like Days of Future Past here, which only involves a couple comic books, is you can actually label it. Alright, so I'm not going to label the comic book itself, I'm going to label its bag and board, but I'm going to use the comic book real quick to see which Uncanny X-Men is in here. So it's just Uncanny X-Men 141 and 142. So what I'm going to do is take my labels here, and I'm just going to write on the label that this is Uncanny X-Men 141 and 142. And then I'm going to take this label that I just drew out, and I'm just going to stick it up here on its bag and board, so that when I am going through my comic books, it'll be easier for me to not only stick this comic book back where it belongs if I pull it out, but also to find this comic book. So 141 and 142 going there. Now occasionally it might happen that you come across duplicates. So I have two of Uncanny X-Men 163. For right now, so one thing you can do is you can either just keep them separate like this, or you can take the duplicate out of the bag and slip it behind the other one so that they would be kind of back to back. It's totally up to you however you want to do it. I usually just put them in the same bag and board, but you can just keep them separate as well. It's just, for me, it's easier to find the titles if they're in the same bag, because when I'm actually looking for, like, let's say Uncanny X-Men 160 or 165, I can kind of file through and it's not going to trip me up, and I'm not going to be like, wait, why is this 6 titles and it should be 5? So totally up to you, but yeah, duplicates, just file them in there however you like it. Okay, so we've entered the final phase of organizing our comic books. What you see here are most of my X-Men comics. They are in these magazine holders up on the shelf. Magazine holder looks like this. You can purchase them at IKEA or Amazon or pretty much any of the like home and office places. Each magazine holder pretty much holds about 30 comics or so if they're bagged and boarded. If they're not bagged and boarded, you'll be able to fit in more. But if you're not going to bag and board them because they're standing upright in these cases, you want to make sure that they're really smushed together, because otherwise if they have any space at all, they kind of start to relax and curve, so they lose their shape. So make sure that you board them and not just bag them or keep them really smushed together. So I know that long boxes are a popular choice amongst comic book collectors because they are easy to come by, they're very cheap, they hold a lot of comics. However, I moved away from long boxes and to the magazine holders because I felt that long boxes are kind of big, they're kind of heavy, they're somewhat unsightly. People tend to stick them in closets or shove them under a bed, and then it's very hard to access your collection, and it's certainly difficult to get to a specific issue very quickly. Whereas this method, your comic books are laid out before you, they're all organized, there's only 30 issues per magazine holder, so it's very easy to go in here and find exactly what you're looking for in a matter of seconds. And if you're a comic book reader like myself, where I like to go back and read my comic books, not just collect them and hoard them away, this method is definitely going to be preferable over the long box method. Alright, so I'm going to show you one of these shelves and kind of explain to you how I do this. So we're getting a little bit up close and personal with my comic books now. So this is the X-Men title. This is the X-Men title that started in the 90s. And I have 1 through 30, 31 through 60, 61 through 113, and then 114, 156. So you'll notice that here I no longer have it in those perfect increments of 30. And the reason that I did that is because during this era, X-Men changed from X-Men to New X-Men, and then back to X-Men. So I wanted to keep all of the New X-Men titles together, and that's why I kind of really stretched them and bunched them in there. And it's kind of a tight fit, but they do fit. So they're all together. So again, with X-Men Legacy, even though it is a continuation of the X-Men title, the title changed. So I put this notation down there, continuation of the X-Men title, so that I would remember that they actually are the related title. And we have the same thing here with Uncanny X-Men, where I was doing increments of 30, but then Marvel did something stupid and they stopped at 544 and started at number 1, went to number 20, but then started back at number 1. So like I just pointed out here with Uncanny X-Men, 544 to 1, all the way up to 20, back to 1, all the way back up to 30, I think. Well, I'm hoping it goes that far. Right now, comic book companies have this crazy idea that if they keep rebooting back to number 1, that people are going to start buying comic books more. But really all they're doing is they're doing a great disservice to the people who have been reading comic books for a long time and have ways that they like to organize them and keep them accessible. And it's kind of really screwing my system up big time, but when in doubt, always look at the publishing date on the inside of the comic book, on the title page. Usually it's down below. So yeah, just try your best to kind of keep it as organized as possible. I know it can be difficult, and hopefully the comic book companies will stop hiring George Lucas to number their comic books, because this is getting ridiculous. The other thing you're going to notice are these little notations that I have above the titles numbers. Like for example, here I have AOA. That's Age of Apocalypse. So when a major crossover event happens, I usually label where in the numbering system that was. So I know that if I am interested in reading the Age of Apocalypse storyline as it pertains to X-Men, that I would be able to find those comic books in this particular magazine holder, because it took place during this time. And there's other ones as well. Here's House of M, took place during these numbers. Endangered Species and Messiah Complex took place during this time. It just makes it easier to be able to find specific arcs. So another thing that is useful with the shelving method is that you have a place now to put your trades. Trades don't typically go into long boxes, but you can display them alongside of your comics. I actually use trades to fill in these small spaces where I can't fit another magazine holder. So I put trades in just to fill in the gap. Up here I did that too. Also, if you collect cards, like I do, you can also put your card binders in here as well and store them with your comic books. So it's just kind of nice because it keeps everything together and in a place that you can find it, so you're not having to dig through boxes or what have you to be able to find things from in your collection. So some people have asked me, how often do you do this? Are you organizing your comics every time you pick up a pool, or do you wait a little while? And the answer is both. Sometimes I put them away right away, and sometimes I let them sit in their pool bag until I've read them all, and then after I've collected quite a few of them, then I'll put them away. And I have more magazine holders down here with more comic books, but on the side I have my current pool. So I just picked these comic books up the other week. I haven't read through them all yet. Some of them are still upstairs, but I will put them away as soon as I am done reading all of them. Alright, so that's your comic book organizing tutorial. I hope you guys were able to use this method and kind of walk away feeling confident in your organizational skills, and that you're able to get your comic books set up in a way that you can read them and access them whenever you want to. If you have any questions, definitely comment below or contact me on one of my social networking sites. I'm Squeak Suicide on Facebook and Squeak Machine on most other things like Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, etc. So just let me know if you guys have any questions, and good luck organizing your comic books.